on your computer.
All right,
Oh,
so
we're
we are
live.
live.
Okay. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. We're so
Morning.
excited today because Jill and I have invited our first guest, our friend Dominic. You can find him up here. So Dom is actually an entrepreneur in the training industry. He co-founded Leaven Academy, which is a training company, and also Baseline, a platform that connects trainers and training companies.
Yeah, thanks
So
for having
we're
me.
very excited to have him today.
Thank you.
So we're going to start with our regular questions, guys. And the question we're going to ask today is, what's one thing you're grateful for last week? So you can leave your comments down below and we'll respond to you. But, Dom, what's something that you were grateful for last week?
I think for me personally was that, now with COVID-19 and this whole circuit breaker measures, as an entrepreneur, business is affected. But one of the things that we were working on, my co-founder and I, we were really trying to push forward a deal with an existing client, but going on to an e-learning platform. So we have to, do our demo sessions and all. So that was all done last week. But it does seem like this is likely going to pull through. And so we are really just thankful to the Lord for just opening doors and new doors, especially since this is, something new for us, e-learning. And so really like what we've been hearing, rolling with the punches and doing things and riding along the waves of this whole season. So yeah, really am very thankful for that. What about the both of you?
Wow, that's so aligned. I'm actually really grateful because last week I managed to, actually the week before I closed a new client and last week I also closed another client. So I was I wasn't expecting this and I was really tightening my purse strings and getting ready for, just the COVID season to tide over. But I'm just so grateful that he's still continuing to bless me with work. So yeah, it really seems impossible. Like it just came out of the blue, and actually one of the clients is actually one of the co-founders of my current client. So she enjoyed my work and she decided to bring me on board for her other project as well. So really just staying faithful to what God has called me and just continuing to do good work. I think that's so important. Yeah.
Wow.
How about you, Jill?
For me, I'm really thankful because I think looking back on this week, it's just really about being thankful for the house that I live in. Yeah, and I think sometimes being stuck at home, we can think about, oh, I want to go out and, like I miss being, out in a mall, or some people are also missing traveling, but I think sometimes it's just having to tune into, the thoughts where you appreciate your house, appreciate your family. And I think that happened for me when, yesterday I was a little bit itchy and I think we had to change our bed sheets. So Jeremy, vacuumed the whole place and changed like our bed sheets for us. And I think that was just something that I was so thankful for because like even the little things like that can make you feel better about your home. Like I miss being out in the mall, or some people are also missing.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I'm just hearing some feedback. Okay, so thanks for sharing, guys. Yes, we're good. So today, the topic that we're having a chat about is, I think what happened was that last week, Jill and I, actually weeks ago, we actually read an article that Dom posted on LinkedIn about understanding your life's mission and purpose. So we've actually included the link down below if you guys want to read the article after this. But we felt that this was really aligned to, our journey with Fully Human, right? It's always about understanding your identity. And I think very closely tied to identity is your mission and purpose as well. So that's what we'll be sharing about today. I guess off the top of my head, like personally, my identity has always been tied to my work. For the last 10 years, it's always been tied to being like an entrepreneur, being tied to being like a digital e-commerce, like marketing consultant. And it was only in the last year or so that I started to question, who am I without my work, right? So when I started as an entrepreneur, I really had these dreams. I was like, okay, before 30, I better hit like Forbes 30 under 30. I better be like X number of magazines. I better get like a company started that's VC funded, etc. And I think when you get caught up in that, you really stop questioning like, why am I even chasing this? Because I had a stand out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think like my identity was always tied to, let's say like the company that I started or like any of the companies workforce. So if someone asks me like, hey, you know, who are you? What do you do? I'm just like, oh, I'm actually, you know, a brand manager here, or I'm like, you know, like an e-commerce strategist here.
Yeah.
And then really one day I just started
Right.
asking myself, if I didn't have a job, right, who am I? And I think that was a very scary question. But when you can ask yourself that question, and when I think what happened was that I had the security in God. Do you know what I mean? I think if I didn't know him back then, when I started asking these questions, I would definitely be a lot more panicky, and I wouldn't really know how to answer that question. So I think like in today's world, especially when we're all part of this particular like rat race, which I see a lot of my friends in, their identity really comes from their work. So how do you
Yes.
carve out your own personal identity and really realize who you are as a human being aside from work? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. Because I mean, just hearing what you said, like I also found myself previously in that portion of just being tagged to, you know, what I do and finding identity from there. Yeah. And when you know, when something happens at work, or when we leave that particular role or that particular organization, and when things are shaken, you know, from that perspective, I think you know, we sometimes are shaken in our identity as well, and we start having all these questions like you mentioned. So it's very true and very relatable also.
Yeah, I agree, you know, because like I was thinking, you know, even as you're sharing, it's so similar to my story of how like I started working as well. And I think because work is such a huge part of our 24/7, right? It definitely affects us and, you know, brings us into places where we think about it tagged with our identity, right? So I think that like for me, as I started out also, I didn't really ask myself the right questions. Of course, I asked myself, what kind of job do I want? But it wasn't really about, you know, who am I? And it was, what am I going to do? Right. And I think it was tagged with a lot of things that I like fashion. And that's how I went into my first job with PR, and then later on into working for in-house brands, doing their marketing. And one of it was actually Aesop. So it's the brand where you have a lot of hand soap and nice smelling moisturizers. Yeah. So and in that job, right, it really, I think, changed my life because there were two parts to it. And I think one of it is how in that brand, right, I think if many of you are familiar with their stores and their products, they are very on point, and every store around the world, you know, like it's an Aesop store, right? So I think when being a staff in there, you also go into that identity, you go into that culture where you're like, I'm an Aesop staff, and you are like very proud to be part of the company because it has such a brand identity, right? And you take on that brand as well. So literally all of us in the office, our wardrobes were all the same. That's why I have a lot of black clothes. So we wear neutral colors like black, gray, olive green, and nude. And then all of us, right, in the office, we need to actually have the same notebook. They give us the same notebook. They give us the same pen as well, and you only can use all the cutlery in the office, nothing else. And you can't put stuff on your table. So it's minimalist, right? And that's how the brand is like. You live and you breathe the brand. Yeah. So I think at that point, you know, I really enjoyed it because it gave myself an identity, and like I'm an Aesop staff, right? It's cool. Yeah. And I think that in that job I learned so much about identity, but as I walk with God as well, right, it's also about how do you tease that, right, and separate from the identity, even though it's something I like, but also knowing that, hey, I'm a different part of that culture and I contribute to that culture as well. You know, and I think it was a journey from there, you know, where I started to understand that it's not so much about adopting the culture of your company, but making an impact with your own identity into, you know, the culture in that company. And I think it's really a journey for all of us. And I would say that when I look back in the last job that I was in at WeWork, I really can say that I actually separated myself from the culture, where I love the culture and I love what the brand stands for, but I also know that I'm a person that is different from that culture, and I can bring change into that place as well. So I think when we do that, right, even the small things that you do in a daily basis will bring you so much joy, rather than just like the to-do list for the brand that you're working for and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's so true. It reminded me of my own experience actually. my very first job in the first training company that I was in. They gave us a lanyard, and then we have our name tags and all that. And so because it's the first job, it's my first lanyard, it's my first name tag, I felt so proud just donning that on and having that, And then when you walk, you feel like, wow, swag, I've got this lanyard on me, So it's so true, that many a times we find this sense of fulfillment from the things that we do. But sometimes, like maybe even in this season when people's jobs are affected, when these things that we cling on to are taken away from us, then it shakes us a little bit and we start thinking, hey, who are we really without these things, without the jobs that we do, without these things that we feel very tight to, So I think it's a very real question that, we are really just addressing this morning. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think like the danger in that I realized was that when my identity is tied to my job, right? I mean, we're all not perfect, right? But when you fail at a task or you don't reach expectations, right? Then if it's so tied to your personal identity, you're going to look at yourself like you're a failure, but it's really okay to make mistakes at your job. It's okay, it's okay to make mistakes in your daily life. But if you tie your identity to that, then it's just so hard to get out of that little hole where you're just looking at yourself like, wow, I failed. I just didn't hit the mark, but I didn't hit the mark that the world set for me and that I set for myself, right? Like, guys, I got really sad at one point where I was like, I'm never going to make Forbes 30 under 30 because I'm above 30, And it sounds really weird, but it really, really hit me. And I was like, wow, I'm such a failure. And when I look back at myself now, I feel so sorry for myself. I'm like, wow, like, I don't know how that little lie came into my head to say that, like, if I'm not featured in a magazine before 30, like, there's nothing left in my life, But when you read the Bible and, like, when you read about, like, all the, like, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, like, they only hit their prime when they were, like, in their 50s. So it's so weird that Forbes would have a 30 under 30 list when most of the top entrepreneurs only reached their prime when they were 50. Like, so that's a question that I've been asking myself also. So, I mean, Dom, I think it would be so great if you could share more about the 4 Ps, which is, and the boundaries. I think that'd be really, really interesting for everyone to sort of better understand how they can discover their mission and their purpose.
Sure. I mean, this came to me sometime last year when I was preparing for a message. And I was really pondering about that verse, in Psalms where it says that the boundary lines, have fallen for me in good places, in pleasant places, And it gotten me thinking, what exactly are these boundary lines, right? So in my usual place in the toilet where I get most downloads, I started realizing that these 4 Ps are pretty much the boundaries, and it really just came to me. It wasn't something that I conjured up because I don't think I have the capacity to be able to do that. But then I realized that, the 4 Ps being place, period, people, and priorities. And when these 4 Ps came to me, I used it as a point of reflection for my own personal lives. And then I started realizing that it was in moments where I found myself in the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right things. Those make up the moments where I felt most alive and most purposeful, But I found this out only on hindsight. It was when I looked back in my life and I realized that, hey, these were the moments that I felt most alive, most purposeful. And I think the question that most people would have is, how then can I apply these 4 Ps in my current position, in the current state that I am, or even so moving forward when considering, a move to another company or when just in a place of transition, right? So, in summary, these are the 4 Ps, but if I could just very quickly just touch on each of these Ps to give us a frame of mind, right? So when it comes to place, I mean, I think many of us as Christians, right, we always in transition ask the Lord, God, show me the place that you want me to be in. God, these are the doors that are open before me. If you can, shut the rest of the door that are not for me and just leave one open so that I know that's not for me. But I realized in my own experience, right, that, I mean, we wish that would happen, but oftentimes it doesn't, right? I mean, we ask the Lord to shut the doors, but the doors still
doesn't.
We're like, then how am I supposed to make a decision, right? Yeah, but I realized, and I learned this from one of my mentors in the first company that I was in, who was also a Christian. And she told me, she said, that it takes a mature Christian to pray a different prayer, to pray a prayer of, God, these are the doors that are open before me. Help me discern which door I should walk into. Yeah, because it's a very easy prayer to just say, God, shut the doors that are not for me, right? But I think God has given us the gift of free will, of choice, So it's a partnership journey that we have with Him to really discern the place that He's called us to. And I think in my own reflection, I realized that many of us, in fact, myself, am guilty of comparing ourselves to someone else, right? And when we look at someone else's place in comparison to the place that we are in, it sometimes makes us feel like, oh man, I wish I was on the other side. And then the phrase comes into the picture of, the grass is greener on the other side, right? As I thought about that phrase, I realized that maybe that ought not to be so. Perhaps the correct phrase should be, the grass is greener where it's cultivated. Right?
Exactly.
Like the place that we are in, are we functioning to the best of our ability? Are there things we can do to cultivate, this place that we are in, so that we find ourselves thriving, so that we find ourselves, being purposeful and all that, right? So I think in consideration of a place, it's really just asking the Lord to lead us and to guide us and discerning His will, so that we are always found in the very place that He has for us. But of course, sometimes it comes time for a move. And in my article, I shared about how I had an opportunity to actually start a company with this current co-founder that I'm working with. But this was back, more than 10 years ago when we initially first wanted to start that company. But it didn't pull through. I felt the Lord said it was not time yet. So I stayed put in the company that I was in. And then shortly after, about a year and a half later, I got a call, from this acquaintance of mine. And he is a founder of a chain of tuition centers. And so he gave me a ring one day and he said, hey, I want to start a training company and I want you to run it. I was like, whoa, this came out of the blue. This came out of nowhere. But then at that moment, I felt that this was time. There was something in my spirit that felt, this was time, and this was time for me to move, And so in considering like the period of time for us to move, right, we really have to think about that kairos timing, like when is that appointed time and that opportune time that God has for us. And I think if we continue to keep ourselves sensitive and obedient to the Lord's guidance, I think we would be able to discern not just the place, but even so the time. Right. And I think to just function to the best of our ability, the people around us really helps as well. And I think, when we have the right people around us, it just helps to unlock that potential that is within us. And it really helps us to thrive and to flourish, right? So personally for me, I do a lot of DISC personality trainings, so there's a language that I use when I talk to people and in helping to work, helping people to be effective and also to increase their sense of interpersonal effectiveness. So there are a lot of things about how we can work better with people so that we find ourselves thriving. But I also realize it's not just about what people do to us, it's not about others unlocking the gift or the potential that is within us, but maybe for us, exactly, for us to, as Christians, to know that we are in this place for a purpose, and so perhaps the assignment that we have is to be a blessing to the company, the organization, and to the people around us, to call the goal forth in them and to help them be who God has intended for them to be, and maybe for us to even share the gospel so that they can encounter the Lord as their own personal savior, right? So that's perhaps a summary on people, and then of course finally on priorities, right? I mean, we all know as Singaporeans, there's just so many things to do. It's just non-stop work after work, and there are task after task and projects after projects, and we are drowned or with so many things to have to do all the time. But of course, to really be effective and to be purposeful is to be doing not just all these things, but perhaps the right thing that is called for at that moment. And in my article, I briefly shared about how Stephen Covey, who wrote the book 7 Habits of Effective People, he talked about the 4 quadrants of time management and how we can use that to just be effective, in terms of managing our priorities. So in summary, I think these are the 4 P's that I was reflecting on, and these are the 4 P's that I wrote about. And so I hope, in this 4 P's, people can take that on to consider, the decisions that lies ahead of them when they are in a place of transition, or perhaps when they're doing a move and so on.
So thanks, Dom, for sharing that. I think that was so great and it's so important. But I have a question, if we were to step back, right? I think something that I've realized with a lot of my friends and my community members is that, how do you even know that you were supposed to be in training, or that you were supposed to be in education? How do you, because I think that's the very first step before you can even understand what your boundary lines are.
Yes,
So
yes.
maybe if you could
Yeah.
share a bit of that, I think that'd be really useful.
Sure.
Yeah.
I always share this even with the people that I train. And this is something that I find true for myself. And I hope this makes sense to you guys also. You see, I think that God has put in us like some giftings and even so areas of interest. All right. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
perhaps indicators that could perhaps suggest the place that we're supposed to go towards. And I remember Lance Wallnau writing an article, and he called this place the place of convergence. And basically,
Wow. Yeah.
imagine like two things coming into convergence. It's essentially your strength and your interest. When your strengths and your interests come into convergence, when you find yourself doing something that you're good at, and when you find yourself doing something that you are interested in, that is often the place of convergence for you. And for me, I mean, I only found this out like some years ago. But when I first wanted to enter into the workforce, I mean, I never knew anything about this, convergence. I never knew anything about these 4Ps, right? So being very real, I was really just thinking about, okay, what are the choices that are laid before me? And which one am I most interested in now, right? And so because I found, okay, training is something that I feel like I'm quite interested in. I'm not sure if I'm good at that. I will probably discover that as I, go along the way. When I first started training, and when I did it one project after another, one training after another, I found myself like really interested in doing what I'm doing. And at the same time, the more I do it, I think it's just honing my ability and honing my gift. And a few years into the company, then that's where I had the opportunity to start a training company. And then, of course, the journey didn't end there for me, because I handed over the company back to the venture capitalist that I was working with, and then eventually started on my own with the current partner that I'm working with. And so I think it's a journey of discovery. I wish all of us can start off the right footing and say, wow, I've discovered my interest, discovered my strength. This is the place I'm supposed to be in. Bam, we are right in the right place, at the right time, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but I think along the way, God leads us to realize that, hey, He's guiding us step by step. And I think through different seasons and experiences, we become wiser, in our decision making. And we start making better decisions. We start thinking about, the past mistakes that we had in the past decisions that we made. How then does this help us to make better decisions moving forward as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally
So
makes
agree.
sense.
Yeah.
I think it's so
And I
good
think,
because, sorry, to go ahead.
no, it's okay. Carry on.
No, I like how Dom shared that it's about making better decisions every day. You're never going to hit a point, like there's no ending. You know what I mean? I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
sometimes in impatience, you're just like, okay, please tell me now. What are my strengths? What
Yeah.
are my passions? And then you're like, but I don't know. But I don't think you can ever get to an answer, because we're humans, we change, and it's really a journey of discovering. Otherwise, what would be the joy in that if you knew all the answers and you just had to live it out with the answers, So I think that's an important point. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we think we know all the answers, or when we try to discover our own answer, many a times I'm guilty of this also. We put God out of the picture because we think we can
Yes.
this in our own strength. We think we know the answer, But I think sometimes Lord hides the answer from us so that we will be very deliberate in joining Him, in partnering with Him to discover this place that He's called us to be in, to discover our identity, our purpose, our mission as well.
Yeah, so amazing. I think okay, so before I continue, I just wanted to say that thank you for those that are tuning in right now. So if you guys have heard what we talked about, also and if you have questions, please feel free to leave it in the comment box, and we'll be also happy to answer it online as well. So I think from what Dom just shared, right, it really reminds me that we're also speaking about identity, right? And I think so often when we, even for many of us that first start working or start our careers, right, we actually do go down this road where we're like, okay, what do I really like to do, or what am I interested in, right? And I think so often that many of us do go down that path, or actually some may, like Kate say, maybe there are some people that thought that my life has a certain path that I need to go on, there are certain answers. So I think there are two trains where many of us, we go like by the interests and strengths that we have, and some of us go like, okay, this is the life that I should live, and let me go this way, right? So I think even for those two paths, if we are not careful, we will find our identity being tagged to our work and all of that, which is what we're talking about, right? But I realized that I think even in what you shared, Dom, when we go back to the place, period, people, and priorities, I was literally like seeing my life, being played before me as you were talking, and I think the very first thing is true, for me, where I actually was thinking about, okay, what are my strengths and what are my interests? And I literally went into marketing, going into fashion and things like that, because those were my interests, and the skills that I learned was in mass communication. So I literally just put them together, know. And then for a long part of my life, right, that was how I literally identified myself. Like how Kate said, right? And one day, like I literally just thought to myself, it's a bit morbid, but I thought to myself, if I were to die and at my funeral, right, if somebody, gave a speech about who I was. Can you imagine if, like, let's say because my goal at that time, right, was to be like some kind of marketing like director in a huge company lah. And I don't know where this dream came from, right? Obviously all of us want to be someone special, want to be someone great in our lives, but so I don't know where it came from. I was just thinking, if at my funeral somebody was telling everyone else, right, about my life as a marketing director, then wow, I think it's damn sad. I think it's so sad, that that's really what people know me for, right? And I started to think, like, what would I want to hear? What would I want to see, when I see in other people's lives? What am I inspired by? I realized that so often when we tell our friends about another friend that we have, we're like, oh, that person, like, wow, just so kind, always so nice. That person has always been there for me when I'm down. Like, the person won't really say that, like, oh yeah, she's a marketing director, she helped me in this and that. Obviously, those are like, like the small details, right, that we help each other in our jobs. But I think something that really makes impact on other people's lives and our own is really when these traits are displayed, when we are growing as a person and we give of ourselves. And I think I started to understand that in our jobs, in our work, right, that it's not so much about what we can get out of it. So I think when I was a lot younger, I always asked myself, what can I get out of this job? And I think, Dom, you've ever shared with us that sometimes it's like when we feel that in a job, when we feel that we have learned enough, we're reaching a plateau. Okay, maybe it's time for me to move. I got offended with what someone said to me here. I don't want to stay anymore. And I think like many times that's how we keep moving. And I'm sure that even in my own life, right, I can see that there were many reasons why I moved jobs here and there. Of course, the Lord has turned everything out for good, right? But like you said, many things we learn in hindsight. So even in that moving, right, from place to place, I never really stayed in a job more than like 2 years. Yeah, and it was always something that I was like wondering why couldn't I stay? And I always felt bad for leaving as well, because I guess there was this learned thought that if you don't stay in a company for too long, then you're not loyal as a person, right? And yeah, and then like on paper, like people will be wondering why you like only have 1 year, 2 years, kind of thing, But I realized that the question that kept me moving, right, was because I was unsatisfied with, what I was doing in my job. And I think it was because I wasn't asking myself the right questions. I was asking myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this when I don't find primary, like deep fulfillment in it, And in a very narrow mindset, what I thought to do, right, was to, okay, if I want to find fulfillment, I'll go into PWOs, I'll go into non-profits, right? And so that was the path that I took, which was also another learning point, right, where it's not even about that. So when I went into a non-profit, I also still somehow felt that sense of like, what am I trying to do here? Why do I still like feel like I'm not fulfilled? And then the Lord really started to teach me, right, that it is not the job that makes you fulfilled. First that you are, you are being fulfilled and being secure in your identity with what God is showing you about yourself, right, as a son and daughter. And like, of course, He's telling you, and about your strengths and your traits and how you can give to the community and the job that you are in. So when I started to have that mindset change, like you say, sometimes like you may be the change, or you may be the person that the organization needs, like for a level up, for a change in that place. And I started to tackle it differently. And I think that, that really, I start to see that it's also about the Kairos time. If I had not gone through all of those other jobs, feeling unfulfilled and coming to a point where how come everything that I think, right, will help me be fulfilled, I already check off the boxes and still I'm not fulfilled? God, like what is wrong, right? So all that convergence came, and like knowing that like even the people around you who are giving you, telling you about your strengths, telling you that, hey, like how you're identified is how God sees you, all these things help, right? And as I became more secure in my identity, then I could bring my whole self into the job, any job that I was in as well. So it's really not the place that you're at, but really I think from it's a overflow of your heart, right? And then your priorities change as well. Okay, when I'm going into work today, right, what is my mission? Is it to touch one person in the workplace? If that person is feeling down and out, how can I help that person? Buy that person a drink, treat them for lunch, not like look at the person and like, why are you not doing your work well? It's something like, why are you bothered by something? Versus like, God, how can we help this person be the best they can be in the workplace? And I think that so much of what you're sharing is like something that I really resonate with.
Yeah. I mean, just to write on like what you said about identity, right? I think it's totally true, that our identity is found in who we are and not what we do, right? When we try to find identity in what we do, that's often being shaken because, what we do changes from season to season, but our identity should be found in who we are. And I think for us, by the grace and mercy of God, we all recognize and have come into the realization that we are all sons and daughters of God, and that's who we are, that's our identity, and that flows into what we do as well. And I think in considering like what we do and all that, right, of course, we recognize that it's a journey of us, partnering with the Lord to discover the plans that He has for us, to recognize that His plans are to prosper us and not to harm us, to give us a hope, to give us a future. But just to touch on one of the things that you shared, Jill, you mentioned about how we often get advice, and I got it myself, from people around me. And these are well-meaning family and friends who would often say, hey, maybe you should start leaving the job when you have learned all that you needed to learn in that place, right? And I think that's a very logical way of thinking when trying to consider a change or a transition from job to job. But I think if we recognize that our identity is not found in what we do, but it's who we are, and then as sons and daughters of God, we fall back into asking the Lord, God, is it time to move? Have I completed the assignment that you have for me in this place? Right. So I think that's a very different train of thought as compared to, have I learned all that I needed to learn in this place? But also to ask myself and ask the Lord, God, have I completed that which you have called me for, the assignment that you have given to me in this place? I think when we hear the Lord say yes, then I think we really have this peace in our hearts to then make the decision to, okay, I think it's time for us to move. And I think in moving, it will probably make, the company that we just left even better place than when we first entered.
Yeah.
I think something that I wanted to touch on as well that Jill brought up was that, I think, Jill, you said, do you want to be known as a marketing director? Or, how would you want people to think of you at your funeral, right? And you said, oh, she was very kind, she was very caring. I think it's very encouraging when you have friends, like between the three of us, for example, you have friends who will lift you up and tell you, I'm so grateful to have you as a friend because you're so caring, or like, you're very considerate and like you're always like blessing us. Because when you look at the world, right, what they focus on are titles. There's no LinkedIn to say like, hey, she's caring, she's joyful. You know what I mean? There's no such thing, right? And in the world, it's all about, okay, what's your job title? What company are you working for? What did you do in terms of like performance and metrics? But no one really says, he added such a joy to the environment.
Yes. Yeah,
Right. When the world doesn't value that, then how do you even find value in yourself? But
like you feel that it's not important.
Exactly, but it's so great when you have friends that walk with you and are like, it's really not about your job title. It's not about your performance, but it's really about, walking in a journey together and just enjoying that journey and really doing life together. So I think what I wanted to say was that the people actually, it's not even your job, but the people in your life, they're really, really so important to building you up and leading you towards your life mission. Because your life mission is not about collecting all these titles and collecting all these jobs. It's really about how you're going to make an impact in their lives. And the world might not see it, but the person you make an impact on, they will know it. But it's not something that is proudly shown, in today's community. So that's what I really wanted to share.
Yeah, it's true. And I have heard, testimonies of some friends who felt like the jobs that they were in previously were really just in view of the things that they are doing currently. It totally seemed meaningless. It didn't seem to fit in the whole picture and the whole grand scheme of things, right? But then when they started thinking back about like why did God put them there in the first place, then they started realizing that, hey, perhaps it's for that particular person. And though what I did in the company didn't seem to make sense to, what I have intended for my future and all that, right? But it would make sense when I start to realize that God put me there for that particular person. And I think in God's perspective, that really is, the place that He's called us to, the place that, we are supposed to be. And I think, when I was just thinking about these 4 Ps, right, beyond just reflecting it and comparing it with my own personal lives, I think the Lord Jesus Himself was really at every point of His life in the right place at the right time with the right people, going about the right things, and I think that's just something that we even learned from the Lord's example.
Yeah. And I think like when you use the word right, I think it's so interesting, because I think so many of us, we have our own idea of what is right in our lives, and I think for so many of us, we realize that is the word right that you're using in here, is that there is such a convergence, and I think that there are also ways for us to actually understand and feel it. So I can't really explain it, but in my own experience, I realized that how I check myself, right, whether I'm in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time, is when I just stop myself and I feel like, wow, how do I feel about doing this right now in this particular job? And sometimes like there's this sense of like feeling, life that's coming out of me, like just so like energized, and it could be like you started the day like really tired, lacking of sleep, but when you started to do that work or you started to talk to someone in that meeting, you realize that, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this, I can't wait to do this project. And then you realize like this is why this is why I live, this is why I live, not for the job, but this is why I do what I do, right? And I think like every time I have that check, right, I realize that, wow, like I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time with the right people, and I think oftentimes we have to remember these moments because there will be times in these jobs, in these roles that we are in, even as parents, right, where we will feel like, are we supposed to be doing this, and even I think that a point to touch is that even when we're doing the right thing in the right place at the right time, there will be trials, there will be difficulties that we face, right? And are we going to quit during that times, or are we going to say that, hey, like, no, this is just a difficult time, and I want to remember back on the times where like I know that this is where I'm supposed to be, this is what I need to do, and then we push ourselves on further. So I think it really, even in those times, it forces us to go back to God and ask, like, hey, is this just one of the difficulties, or I don't want to be too quick to just think that I'm supposed to move again or whatever.
Actually, this leads me to a really interesting question. You know how they say like there's fruits of the spirit, right? So Dom, I guess like Jill question is, are there signs that you're in the right 4 Ps right now? Do you know what I mean? Because I think something that you just brought up was some sort of like a sign to yourself that this is really something that you're doing, that you're enjoying, So I'm just wondering, like, is that a sign that I'm within the 4 Ps?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
In that sense, So Dom, if you please feel free to share.
Well, honestly, I think there are more reflective questions that we need to ask ourselves in relation to each of the 4 Ps. And I gave some of these questions in the article because, like Jill said, it is only when we pause and when we start reflecting on these 4 Ps in the current place, time, with the people and things that we're doing, right? Then we start asking ourselves, hey, do I feel like I'm in the right place? Do I feel like the sense of energize, the sense of synergy that comes from within, the sense of being energized in the place and being excited, passionate, and so on and so forth? Then perhaps these could be indicators that, you are in the right place, right? And then I think when you're faced with a transition, and then whether or not the place is the next place is the place that you're supposed to be in, that's a question that we have sort of talked about, right, in the different criteria and all that. But I think in consideration of time with period, it's really a lot about discerning and asking God, like, is there really a time for me to move, or is it not time yet? And I think this is something that we really have to lean in close to ask a lot. Because personally, for me, I had that experience, when I first wanted to move out from my very first job. But then I really felt the Holy Spirit say to me, wait. And because my baptism name is Joseph, right? The Holy Spirit reminded me that, this is the current place that I'm in. The Holy Spirit said, this is your Potiphar's house. So be faithful and serve there. And so I felt like it's my Potiphar's house, because I feel like I didn't want to be there anymore. I feel like I want to, head out and do other things. And perhaps that's how Joseph really felt like when he was in Potiphar's house. Then Holy Spirit said, wait. And so because I heard that, I obeyed and wait. Then that's where I got the phone call, like I shared, right? So I think that's really just leaning in close, and listening into the Lord. And likewise for people and priorities, with these reflective questions, when we really are deliberate in pausing, reflecting with these questions, then perhaps it will help us to, discern a little bit more to see if we are within these boundaries, using the 4 P's as a guide. Yeah.
And it's such a good time to pause now.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
we're all stuck at home. So we might as well just look at, the place, period, people, and priorities, and ask all these questions and better understand it before we get back into the fast pace of our lives.
Exactly.
And Kate, I think for me, when you asked that question, a story came to my mind about one of the times where I was in the non-profit that I was working for, and I would find myself towards the end, right, where I would get really fast in doing all my tasks for the day. So I would finish everything maybe maximum 2 hours, but I have the whole office day, right? So obviously I'm not going to tell my boss I got nothing to do lah, right? So but what I ask God, right, is like, okay, so if I'm finishing my job in 2 hours, God, what do you want me to do here lah? There must be a reason for this open time for the rest of the office day. And then he told me, he told me that obviously when he told me, I obviously don't know whether this correct, but I just go by faith lah. And he said, to go and edify and encourage the people around you. And so what I did was to take a lot of white paper, and then I would draw each and every one of my colleagues' names, and then I would ask God for a download and ask them, like, Lord, how are you seeing them? How shall I say something about their name that declares something good over them? And then I would write each of their names, and I would remember, some of the things they did or what they said and how they are like, and then I would put down what, would best represent them. Some could be courageous, some would be, that you are so full of justice and all of that. So I would write these cards, and then when they were all out for lunch, I went to buy some candy that I put on all of their desks, and later on, some of them, like, they didn't say anything to me. And of course, as a human being, right, you want a bit of credit, right?
Yes.
So I'm like, why they never, like, come back and tell me, that, like, I do something for them. So you see, even in there was a struggle for me, But then later on, some of them, they actually took the card, they pasted it on their laptop, and then some of them, they put it on their wall in the office, and they put a plastic sheet over it to cover and all of that. And then I just felt, wow, like, God, you're so good, that you also don't allow this to be an opportunity for me to flatter myself, but it's just to know that these things, right, impact people, and that if you put it up, right, it's something that they want to see every day, they want to remind themselves, right? And I think, like, that so blessed me, because it's not about me, I shouldn't get the credit, but it's when they see that, they remind themselves of who they are, right? And then I realized that, wow, Lord, this is what you're also teaching us, to do. This is like my mission, my purpose in this particular place. If the job at hand, is done already, what else can I do that will further, fulfill my mission in this place? And it was really like then that I realized that it's not so much like fulfilling just the JD of what we need to do at work. It's beyond the JD, and how we can really be, fully human to another person in the workplace, even your boss and things like that.
Yeah, that's good.
I have one last question, actually, because, Dom, I think a part of me is wondering, right, just now when you said about the discernment, right, asking God for discernment. So, if we have, like, viewers or friends who are who don't know God, how can they discern? right? Because for me, it's really about practically asking these questions, because I have some people who do ask me, and I really want to help them. Like, I'm just wondering, how do I help them when they don't know God, right? And nobody's
Yeah.
going to help them discern,
Yeah.
what are some practical steps or questions they can ask
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
So I mean, if I mean, for us, because we know God, so that's why we have that gift of discernment and we can ask for that gift. But I think for people who don't, then really it's about approaching, having mentors and people to be able to guide you, or perhaps having certain books, that you read that you can help to extract certain pointers that can be applied in your life. And I think all these things can help to point a person towards the right direction. And I think for me, when I look at my circle of friends, right, like for example, in the first job that I was in, there were really good bosses in that company. And I think these bosses who themselves were Christians, they were very deliberate about guiding these people who may not be Christians, right, towards the calling forth, that potential that is within them, unlocking the gifts and the potential that's within them, so that they themselves can discover who they are and, hopefully also find purpose and meaning in the things that they do. And I think that's actually a good point for us who are Christians, who are leaders in the marketplace, to actually think about, right? For people that we are surrounded with who do not know the Lord, how can we point them towards the right direction, even in their lives, right? By being the mentor, being the person who could speak life, who could call forth what's within them, so that they can fulfill that potential that is within them. So I think just being surrounded with the right people actually makes a huge difference. And that's why there's that saying, right? You show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Like what you just said is so tied to what Jill was sharing about, right? Like, these are the kind of people you need to have
Yes,
in your life, right? Because
exactly.
what Jill did was that she was giving these people life. She was
Yeah,
speaking life into them. Like, Jill, your card means so much to me, because
it's true.
you see, it's like you saw my best qualities and you put it down on a piece of paper, and every day I remind myself, right? Like, I'm flawed, I'm not perfect, but this is the best that my friend saw in me, and I want to be able to build myself up and grow into that best version. So I think
Yeah.
what the both of you shared is just so closely interlinked, right? You really need to have people around you who can speak into your life, who can give you
Yes.
guidance, who can
Yes.
really have the best intentions and see the best in you, lah.
Yeah, it's so true.
Someone has a bird in the house, so cute.
me. Yeah, and I think I just want to end, with this verse that I have been so I hold on, to so fastly, right now. It is that, like in Psalms, it says that, we make our own plans, but the Lord directs our steps, right? And I think, like, in everything that we do, whether it's the jobs that we choose, I think that lots of times, like Dom say, it's always God gives you a choice, right? And whether you know Him or not, you have the free will, you have the choice to choose anything, right? But I think it's so amazing that, when we are with God, we have that security, that whatever choice we make, right, we know that as we put our trust and our hope in Him, right, that He will direct our steps. So we never ever have to fear about making a mistake. And sometimes we can even embrace it, and I can remember tons of mistakes that I made, in the past. And in the past, I would used to hide them because it, showed me, how maybe unworthy I was of the job or the work that I was doing. But I think now, with such security in God, it's more of like, if I made a mistake, I will actually embrace it and say, hey, I'm not perfect and I'm learning, and it does not point to your identity any longer. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that, so that if for anyone else that is watching, alongside us, is that you don't have to worry about making mistakes, or if, like, we were talking about discernment, how do you know whether you're supposed to move or not? Even if you feel like you may not, be confirmed 100% knowing that you need to move, or you need to say this or do that, sometimes it's always about the element of faith. And if you come to know God and you know God, that then you will have that security, like that it doesn't matter, and that when you move with faith, mistakes are really just another thing on your path, right, to make you successful in the way that the Lord, has made you.
Yeah, that's good.
So good. Okay. We are almost at 50 minutes, but I think this has been such a fruitful conversation. Thank you, Dom, for joining us.
No, thank you so much for
Thank
having me.
you.
Shall we close in prayer?
Yes, please.
Okay. It's not good. Father God, we just want to thank you for bringing the three of us together, Lord God, and for, allowing us to be so open in sharing our hearts with each other, Lord God.
Mm.
Father God, we want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to share across digital platforms, our stories, and our experiences and our walk with you, Lord God. Father God, I just want to pray that for whoever is watching right now, we hope that you'll be able to speak to them, Lord God, even if they don't know you, Lord God, just knock on the doors of their hearts and just let them have an encounter with you, Lord God. Let them know who you are, Lord God. And for anyone who's seeking out their identity in you, Lord God, for anyone who's asking these questions about, am I in the right place? Am I at the right time? Am I surrounded by the right people? Father God, just direct their steps, Lord God.
Yes.
Yes, amen.
Speak to them and just show them the answers that they're looking for, but also, allow them to enjoy the journey, Lord God. Allow them to enjoy the discovering, Lord God. Enjoy the process of knowing you and knowing
Yeah.
who they are in you, Lord God. I just pray for all three of us and for our friends, our families, anyone who's watching, that we invite your presence into our lives, into our house, Lord God. We speak your shalom, Lord God, especially during this time, Lord God. We
Yes.
pray for the health of our loved ones, Lord God. We pray for the health of our countrymen and anyone and everyone who lives here in Singapore, Lord God. We thank you that you have been watching over us and
Yeah.
have been so faithful in your love towards us, Lord God. So thank you, Father God, for this conversation and this time together with you. And in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you, dog.
Thank you,
No
dog.
problem.
Okay, we'll see everyone next
Bye.
week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.